You probably never pay attention to it. Right now, somewhere in your kitchen or living room, that little outlet quietly glowing on the wall, keeping your refrigerator or router running, is doing something that breaks the brutal laws of nature. For the past 200,000 years, every single one of your ancestors lived in a cruel world with no electricity, no modern medicine, and no idea where their next meal was coming from. It was a slaughterhouse where nature could swallow you alive if you made one mistake. But right there on that ancient savanna, surrounded by predators and starvation, humans made an incredibly crazy decision. And that single decision became the hidden foundation that built human civilization. It is the only reason you can sit here today, comfortably scrolling through your phone, and it is the reason you have language, thought, and emotion. So, what exactly was this survival miracle that nature strictly forbade, yet our ancestors forced into existence? The answer is going to completely flip everything you think you know about why humans conquer the Earth. Before we get to the core of the story, we have to kill a massive lie you've seen in every textbook and documentary since childhood. The myth is that survival of the fittest means ancient humans were all cold, ruthless beasts. In most people's minds, prehistoric society was just a bunch of muscular, stone spear-wielding hunters chasing woolly mammoths through the blizzard, while the old, the sick, and the injured were heartlessly abandoned in the wild to die. That is completely a cartoon version built up by modern people. When modern archaeologists brushed away the thick dirt and looked up from fossilized human remains dating back hundreds of thousands of years, they discovered a shocking truth that rewrote the laws of biology. Among massive collections of ancient human bones, scientists frequently found something completely counterintuitive. Skulls where all the teeth had fallen out long before death, yet the individual lived for over a decade without the ability to chew. Leg bones that had suffered devastating, crushing fractures, but measured a miraculous, complete healing that took months, if not years. In a prehistoric world where every single calorie had to be bought with your life, a hunter with a broken leg or an old person with no teeth was, biologically speaking, a 100% burden. By every cold mathematical equation of nature, they should have become dust within days. But they didn't. What does this mean? It means that on a foggy morning tens of thousands of years ago, a group of muddy, illiterate primitive humans made a choice that violated every animal instinct on Earth. We are not leaving you behind. They gathered around the fire and took the most precious, high-calorie fat and marrow cracked from animal bones, and fed it piece by piece into the mouth of that toothless elder. When the band moved camp, the strongest hunters laid down their weapons and willingly took turns carrying that injured companion on their broad backs. Nature said, "The useless must die." But humans said, "No." This was the highest form of devotion, 40,000 years before the word love even existed. We always assume it was sharp stone tools and smart brains that allowed us to conquer the planet, but in reality, it was this relentless, stubborn compassion, this willingness to catch each other when we fall, that kept us alive through every single extinction crisis. If that just gave you chills, if you are realizing right now that you are alive because some blood-soaked ancestor 50,000 years ago refused to let go, then do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button right now. This channel is for people who aren't satisfied with superficial trivia, people who want to understand where we really came from. You belong here. Why was caring for these burdens actually the highest form of survival intelligence for humans? Because humans invented a massive database that had never existed in nature before, the human brain. Picture that ancient world with no books, no internet, and no writing of any kind. Every piece of knowledge, every piece of experience, every map, and every survival skill could only live inside one database, a living human skull. When an old person who remembered how to find a hidden spring miles away during a once-in-a-lifetime drought died, it wasn't just a single death. It was an irreplaceable library burning completely to the ground. Asterisk those grandmothers who knew how to use bone needles to sew three-layer technical clothing were the living engineering standards. Asterisk those elders who knew which plants could stop a wound from bleeding and which mushrooms would kill you were the living encyclopedia. Asterisk those keepers of the fire who could read the sky and predict a blizzard hours in advance were the weather satellite for the entire tribe. Those ruthless, cold species who abandoned their companions the moment they were injured lost their entire database every time an individual died. They had to start back at zero, learning through death over and over again. But Homo sapiens chose to keep their old people alive and protect their weak. Because of that, knowledge could finally stack, generation on generation, like bricks building a fortress. We are not powerful because any single one of us is incredibly smart. If you were dropped alone into a primitive jungle tomorrow with no modern tools, you wouldn't last a week. Our power is entirely collective. It comes from this bridge connecting the living and the dead across time. Now, let's bring our eyes back to today. Tonight, when you walk into your home, reach out, and flip a switch on the wall, light instantly floods the room, and warm air flows through the house. This comfort and safety that you take completely for granted isn't just luck. It is a gift that was paid for in advance by thousands of generations of your ancestors through blood, sweat, and tears. They bought it for you by fighting through Ice Age winters, starvation, and apex predators. The greatest tragedy of the modern world is that we are so addicted to asking search engines for answers that we've forgotten to listen to the elders sitting right next to us. We give our most efficient algorithms to glowing screens, while treating the rarest, warmest human wisdom like out-of-date white noise. Every breath you take tonight is the finish line of a relay race that has been running for hundreds of thousands of years. Inside your DNA, you still carry the warmth of that ancient campfire, the desperate craving for belonging, and the instinct to trust a small circle of people who would never leave you behind. Tonight, while your heating clicks on and runs quietly in the background, go talk to the elders in your family, or pick up the phone and call your parents. Listen to their stories, because those stories are the very fire tokens that make you human. If you want to know what those ancestors, who successfully conquered the bitter cold, were actually terrified of as they huddled around the fire during those 14-hour winter nights, that story is already waiting for you in the next video on your screen. Click it. Your ancestors spent 1,000 generations fighting through the dark just so you could be here. The least you can do is understand what they were afraid of. I'll see you there.